Hey, everybody.
Happy Thursday. Happy
Yeah.
4th of July for
Happy
all of our
post-Canada
US
Day.
viewers.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
We did it first.
We did do it first.
That's
and
right.
we did it well. We had a house full of freedom fighters, like-minded people, lots of interesting discussion, lots of laughter, and fireworks.
Well, but you say like-minded people, but I couldn't think of a more, it was a very diverse group of people as well. They're all on the same side, but it was diverse ideologies and religions and races. And so it was a very diverse, all who, were united in wanting to save our country.
Even some people who don't believe what we believe, but after the weekend and having the conversations they actually said, thank you for doing this. Thank you for all that you do. And I'm looking forward to the next one. And you've opened my eyes.
Right. So mark your calendars for July 1st, 2025. Everybody within our 15-minute city will be welcome. Yeah. So.
And if you can sneak out of your 15-minute city, you're welcome to.
That's right. So we did a TikTok about a week ago now. Basically, a friend of ours had come forward. She works at a store, and two people in her area had come forward and said that they were taking their chickens away. So that's now 2 reports in the general area. So we did a TikTok on it. We're saying, hobby farmers, just hide your egg signs and
get rid of your egg signs. Hide your chickens.
Yeah, hide everything because they're coming for you. They're gonna cull your chickens on the false premise of avian flu. And of course, they're going to use the PCR test to take your chickens away. And that thing blew up. So we thought, well, maybe we should do a thing on food security. We've been talking about it with our good friend Ed Embury for about 2 months. And we thought, well, maybe we should do that now because clearly that is important to people at this very moment. So
it also gives people time to prepare. So without further ado,
let's bring on our very good friend, researcher, farmer, and probably the only other guest that rivals our friend Todd Michael-Harris for the amount of returns on this show, Edward Embury. Welcome back.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. How are you?
I'm really good now. I did have a little stint there where I wasn't so good, and I had a Ford vacation. But I'm back at it, and I'm happy to be back at it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's
I'm
awesome.
happy you're back at it because I keep bugging you. When are you ready? When are we doing our farm show?
And I apologize for that.
I'm sure you're tired of me saying that.
It's no problem.
I'm just glad you're healthy. You're back in the tractor seat and rip raring to go.
Yes. And also you're a farmer, which means you have to get up super early. So thank you for taking the time and being here tonight.
Not a problem.
So where do we want to start? It's such a big subject these days.
Well, I thought I'd just give you a little update on where we are currently in Ontario, Quebec, the world, USA, in the current crop and food where we are in farming. And what we're actually seeing in Ontario is I would say since I've been farming, the most excellent crops I've ever seen in my life. So global warming doesn't seem to be having any effect. They say corn knee high by the 1st of July. We have corn waist high, or actually it's up to my shoulders high. Beans, wheat, hay is a little challenging because all the moisture we're getting. But crops look really good across Ontario, Quebec, out the west in Western Canada. In the States side, crops are they actually didn't get 1 million acres of corn in. How that plays out in the fall and how the price reflects, we'll have to keep watching. Of course, it's right from this time out now is the most important part as the crop starts to head out and put kernels on those for grain. It'll be the most important. So we'll see how the heat affects that. Across the world, jumping over to Russia. Russia last year actually helped the world out by they were way down the list years ago. 13th, 14th wheat producer in the world. They jumped up to first in the last 3-4 years. Actually, their crop actually is as much as the United States and Canada's combined. Canada used to be first as wheat producer, but they're going to see about a 45% less crop. That's going to be devastating because last year they helped out. They gave a lot of crop away for free, and Russia, Asia needs that wheat. So that's going to be kind of devastating and to watch because the price is going up in flour. India, on the other hand, is had virtually a month of 40 Celsius degree weather for rice in the world, and there's going to be a really big trouble in rice coming up as the year goes by. They say the price could explode. And just a little bit of a note on the beef apocalypse that's happening. We had a calf, not our calf, but we had a calf sold here in Eastern Ontario. It was a 108-pound calf. It sold for $1,708 for $1,700, sorry, and $3 for a 108-pound calf. What we're seeing across the beef industry is absolutely crazy. A group of steers this week in Ontario, they're 728 pounds, sold for over $3,500. So they're just half the weight they need to be to be finished. So this beef price is going to explode as we get into fall, and by all counts, they're just people are going to pay extreme prices for beef, and there's absolutely no way to get out of it. It would take, they say, as many as 20 years to regain the stocks. We're down nearly 45% of the beef herd in North America. Much the same is happening in hog industry. We had the 2 plants that shut down. I've talked about this, but I'll re-talk about it. The 2 plants that shut down in Quebec that cut nearly 3 million less hogs in Ontario, Quebec. So we're seeing, again, some price fluctuations, the pork on the way up. But what's happening with both of these scenarios is that we're now seeing beef arriving in Canada and pork arriving in Canada from, of course, beef from South America and pork from across the ocean. So it's not home. You're not able to get the homegrown pork and beef, and soon chicken will be the same. So it's going to be hard. It's going to be more money for the consumer, and we're not going to be able to get the Canadian product that we like to get. So that's my little update on what's going on on the farm scene as presently.
So what's causing the drop in all the livestock? Is it are they culling them? Or
in the beef animals?
Sure. Yeah.
What's happening there is just year over year. There's been some, quite a bit of drought in the Midwest, in Alberta, Saskatchewan, that caused farmers to sell their animals because they didn't have feed was expensive. Usually, a bale of hay sells $25, $30. Farmers were paying over $100.
Oh boy.
There was no hay actually in Alberta, and a lot of hay went from Ontario a couple of years ago or 3 years ago out to Alberta. I forget what they call it, like hay to the west or something. They were sending it by train and transport. So these drought conditions that are caused not by global warming, but by global manipulation of the weather, not by the global warming that we're told, but global manipulation,
right,
are causing great effects in the farming industry. Beef, as you said, Chris, has a huge amount of nutrients in it. It's probably one of the best meats that you can eat. Lamb, because it's grass. Most of the weight is put on with grass. It's not all grass fed, of course. but it's a good deal. And of course, a lot of that meat goes on by mummy too, providing milk to that calf. Where the chicken industry is really not a good, and I'm going to get into that a little bit as I think we proceed, is why this bird flu is happening. So
Right.
If you could remember to ask me about feed, I'm just writing it down. I'm circling and putting a bunch of stars beside it.
Are farmers concerned about all the chemtrails falling down on the grass? And obviously, the beef and sheep are eating the grass. Are they concerned about the contamination from the chemicals?
I don't think anybody, I think we see those planes flying over our heads. I would say 99.7% of the population doesn't know what the hell that is.
Got
so
it.
I don't think that they really realize that something is happening to them. But I mean, I don't know I do know quite a bit about that. And it's probably not the time right now to go into that. Maybe it's another. I think though, if we look at if a cow is eating grass, or what you look at the label on a bottle of ketchup or some bottle, you're likely worse off with eating what's in the label of something than the cow eating the grass and the chemtrail. That's my observation.
Right. Okay.
Right.
I don't know what extent that's really there is an extent, but what extent that's harming, because we're not seeing cattle seamlessly sick from it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good to know that we're not seeing the effects yet, but it doesn't mean we won't later on.
We will. Yeah, we absolutely will. So you were talking about a drought. You were talking about hay. And then we came across this story from Idaho where they were shutting the water off. They wanted the farmers to shut off the water, but the government wasn't asking the greenhouses and factories, battery factories.
Courses.
Yeah, the golf courses, they could leave their water on, but they were expecting farmers to the tune of 500,000 acres to shut their water off. And if they were going to use the water, they had to pay $300 an acre. And this guy goes over it.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm adding water to my feed, and I wanted to jump on here because I'm adding water to my feed to touch on the fact that Idaho just tried to shut off water to a ton of farmers. And it's not like they let the farmers know during the winter. No, they were going to shut the water off after farmers had already put seed in the ground and had crops growing, which was going to devastate them. Luckily, as of right now, there is a stay on that order, and so they still have water. But this is something we all need to be paying attention to, because no water means no crops. But guess who they didn't turn water off to? Golf courses, government buildings, things like that. No, it's just the farmers that grow your food. In Idaho, of all places, we're used to that in California or Klamath Falls, where they try and do it every dang year. But Idaho, it makes no sense. So, might want to look into that, people, and keep pressure on the government in Idaho not to put a bunch of farmers out of business.
So we watched a 10-minute video of two other farmers who broke it down, and basically it has something to do with the water rights in an aquifer, but the aquifer was well over, it's under technology. It's like since 1900 it's been there, and they haven't upgraded it at all. So they're trying to shut the water off for 500,000 acres. And they said in our little region, we're responsible for like 80% of the potatoes in the entire country. And that was not a lot of area. I think it was like 182 acres or something like that. It wasn't a lot.
182,000.
180,000 acres, yeah. And so, yeah, and they're saying, and they want to shut the water off in 500,000 acres in Idaho. So it looks like they won and they've backed off of that for now. But I mean, that looks pretty planned to me that they want to, cut down food.
It is. I've been following that story and looking at that story, and it's just another incident where we're having our food. It's showing them what they can do. There's rhyme or reason for it because looking into that, investigating that, there's lots of water there to actually continue to irrigate. But of course, these climate alarmists, what's going on is basically them making a mountain into a molehill, or they're just, of course, you have the population, and we've been talking about this I'd say in our farm world, that most of these people in the cities have no idea what's going on. They're buying into the whole climate and into this, even though you could say the liberal agenda or the agenda is failing. They still have put it into their minds because most of these people, especially younger people, have been educated with that in mind. So they have in mind that we're short of water, short of trees, and if they really think that we're short of trees, come on down here. I'll take them for a drive to the north of our riding, and maybe they haven't driven out of Ontario and driven across. So when you get into northern Ontario, it's the only thing you see is trees.
It's all trees, exactly.
Right. Same as BC, yeah.
So they have it in their mind, and that's what we're up. This is what we're up against. I say we're going to see more of that, and it just drives farmers out of business. It's the same thing, which is when basically some of that what we talked about with beef prices. It's the same. Remember, folks, we had mad cow disease. I lost over $100,000, well over $100,000 in my small operation. People went out of business because of mad cow disease, which was another COVID.
Right.
There was, and we should be ashamed of ourselves for what happened, but it could have been easy stopped because, and I'm going to get into that when somebody says talk about feed, when we get into bird flu.
I've got it underlined, and I got it started, so we will talk about it for sure.
Yeah. But those farmers down in Idaho, they have actually kind of a good news story. They're all starting to unite and say no together. And the power of that is right now, the state of Idaho has backed off. We don't know how long they'll back off for, but that's the power when you stand up and say no, and others join you on each side. So it just shows what you can do, right?
Yeah. Don't piss off the farmers. Don't piss off the truckers.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Canada doesn't seem to grasp the concept as much as they do in the Netherlands. Like, everybody supported the farmers in the Netherlands.
Yeah.
It seems like only the farmers really understand how precious or perilous it is if we start messing with farming. I don't know if the rest of the population is kind of grasping that just yet.
Well, I think the rest of the population still thinks you just go to the supermarket and magically the meat and food appear. They have no clue as to the process of it getting there.
Yeah, they don't understand. And maybe this is a good little segue. Yeah, good word. A little segue to update some people. So if you're talking about beef, you have one company, which is in Olds, Alberta, Cargill, which in that one plant slaughters 43% or processes 43% of Canada's beef in one plant. You have in Ontario the only plant that's a federal plant in Ontario, which is owned by Cargill, which they process around 78% of Ontario's beef. And that plant right now has been on strike for 4 weeks. And farmers are having to take their cattle either to the west, Quebec, or into the States because there's no place in Ontario to slaughter. So this industry, you have Cargill there, and the pork industry in Canada. You have I should know this off by heart, but Holy Mill, which we controls the hog. You have 4 companies that control the poultry side of it, 2 companies that control the egg side of it, 4 companies that control the chicken side of it. So you have a handful of companies here that are controlling all your food. When one of those processors are so strong, they set the price. Mm-hmm. And when they set the price that's below what the farmer needs, farmers go to business. So that's why these farmers are disappearing, because the price went low. They had obligations. They went out of business. That's how it's been working.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And these companies were able to get monopolies due to mergers, and the Canadian regulator the Canadian regulator being overridden by our current government to allow these amalgamations to go through. And I know my brother-in-law, he's also a farmer, and he was talking about how the Chinese are coming in and buying up all the farms, and the farmers still get to live on the farms and they still get to run it and work it. But now they've got a regular paycheck every week. So they're more than happy to sell their farms out to these Chinese companies, because it's the first time in their life they've ever had a regular paycheck, but they still get to do what they love to do. But at the same time, now the farms are held by a monopoly of these foreign entities that again control the meat that we get to eat.
That's absolutely. We don't know of what extent that has taken place. I know locally across Ontario, across Canada, across USA, that has definitely happened. People talk about the Microsoft Gates deal.
Mm-hmm.
But in actual fact, this is a way bigger deal of what you just said than anything that Bill Gates is doing. Bill Gates would look like that would just be a 1 to 3% option of actually what's going on. Like locally, we just had a farm that's nearest wanting to rent some land. Went there. It was a foreign person. They don't want to do anything on it. They just want to have us crop it, so that so they're just holding. You see this happening all over the place. So you're absolutely right with what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I don't want this to turn into a 3-episode show, so I'm trying to.
Yes, neither do we. They keep going. There's so much to cover here. So, but you're absolutely right. We keep saying the globalists don't have the power. Everybody thinks they're just good at controlling certain things. Like they can't control all the farmers, but they do have hold of the slaughterhouses. So that's one good example. So the topics we sort of want to cover tonight are they're culling chickens under the guise of avian flu. They're testing milk now because they're saying the milk is jumping over to, or the avian flu is jumping to cows. We're just going to talk about pasteurized versus raw milk. So there's so much, and now they're checking cows at they're basically checking cows at the border, and they're basically creating another pandemic scenario, but they're using the PCR testing, which we know is fraudulent, to do it all over again. So before we get into all that, hey, did you have something you wanted to say about feed and chicken feed?
You keep talking and we'll bring that up at some
just naturally. Okay, well let's bring this up to set the stage. So again, they're using avian flu. We should state that I still am old enough to remember a time that people would say, you don't worry about animals. Animals can't get your disease and you can't get their diseases. So anytime there's something that jumps from species to species, there's gain of function involved. So somebody's doing something to that disease to make it jump from species to species. So that's the first thing. But we want to talk about this thing we talked about about a month ago now. And this is the leaked
Teresa Tam video with all the
exactly
public health
right.
authorities and the agricultural authorities.
And they said so much in that, but this is they were talking about pasteurized milk in this particular instance, and we wanted to highlight what they have to say about it.
There are two things that are being done with milk: experimental studies to validate pasteurization efficacy and effectiveness that has been done in the US. Those are being done in benchtop simulated conditions because we're still level 3 restricted at this.
So that's important right there. They have simulated testing to back up what they want to say about pasteurized milk. They don't actually have testing. They don't have the science, but they're making it up on desktop simulators.
This point.
The samples that will be batch tested, is it pasteurized milk or not pasteurized?
Yeah, only pasteurized at this point. Should we find, it's actually, it's a good point that there's a big information evidence gap that no one's actually tested in egg culture unpasteurized milk yet, or if they're doing it, they haven't released the results to prove that those ridiculously low CT values are actually representative of live virus that we're all assuming it is.
So they
assuming
they literally say they have no evidence to say that raw milk is bad, no scientific evidence whatsoever,
and certainly fits with the epidemiology because we think it's milk is the vehicle of transmission. So it's an excellent point, and if we find positives, obviously we'll make sure we do that if no one else has done it. Obviously, there's a lot of messaging that will have to happen with that, starting with the fact that we told you when we were doing this that all the evidence suggests that milk is safe even if we detect RNA. We are doing this to try and understand the burden of disease. Milk is still safe if it's pasteurized, but doubling down on the non-pasteurized milk messaging, which obviously is something we've been doing already.
So they're not testing unpasteurized milk, but they're saying it's unsafe, and only if it's pasteurized is it safe, even if they find RNA in it.
Right. And they're going to double down on the anti-raw milk messaging, even though they have no science to back up their theories whatsoever.
And what I read today in one of the articles you sent me was that they've actually been experimenting with implantation in cows' heads that actually, they started in 2021, and the experiment will be done in 2026, where they've implanted mRNA devices in the cows, and it is slowly over time releasing RNA vaccine stuff through the cows. And now we know that they're testing pasteurized milk and saying it's safe, and not testing unpasteurized milk and saying, well, we're going to double down that it's dangerous during this whole experimental phase. But they're not telling the public that they have implanted these devices in the cow that is going to send mRNA vaccinations through the cow whenever they feel like it. It's going to be a release over time. So crazy.
Crazy. So should we talk about feed? Because I'm about to blow the doors off. I'm about to blow the doors off this.
Please.
Okay. What does the Queen, what kind of milk does the Queen of England drink? She drinks unpasteurized raw milk. She has a Jersey herd, and the royal family has been drinking unpasteurized raw milk for eons. That's the royal family. Seems that they can drink unpasteurized milk, but no one else can. First, number two. As I mentioned, we had years ago. We had the disease affected all the cattle. It's not awful. I can't think of it. The Jacob's disease, which is mad cow disease.
Right.
Jacob's disease. How did Jacob's disease start? How Jacob's disease started was in England, but it was across the world what do cattle eat?
Hay and grass.
So they're herbivores.
Yes.
And so if a cow eats another cow, is that what they should be eating? Are they
No.
carnivore?
No.
No.
Well, then, if you look into it, people, what was happening is that farm animals were becoming carnivores because they were eating each other. So what was happening is that meat mill, after they kill the animals, they take the meat, they cook the meat, and then that's fed back to the cattle. But they feed meat meal, they feed blood meal, they feed feather meal, they feed bone meal. That all goes into animal feed. So what happened is, of course, was when this mad cow disease all started going. Of course, they stopped. Everybody said you can't eat beef, and people backed off beef. And beef wasn't. If you had an animal, because Canada had one animal in Canada, and then all the countries of the world said we're stopping taking your beef.
Right.
People started backing off. Farmers lost money, and we're now in this situation where beef prices has led to this. So what they did is they stopped carnivores, beef animals, from eating beef. You can't feed meat meal to ruminants, which are so they stopped that. But what animal that they do feed it to is the poultry. And there's abundance of meat meal, bone meal, feather meal, blood meal. It's all being fed to chickens, turkeys. That's where it's been going for the last, let's say 15 years. Has been going into that industry. In the USA, they feed because it's cheap, and they have a cheap food policy. Farmers are looking for something to feed cheap. So what they feed is meat meal to poultry. How do poultry get a disease? A disease that's revolving now. They not only feed, this is disgusting, in the cattle industry, they feed chicken manure.
Right.
So they feed chicken manure to cattle. I haven't looked into it, but I'm probably sure they feed it to dairy cattle too. So we're having if you have a disease that's in poultry and then you feed it to another animal, this is how it's jumping over to another animals. Thus, it jumps over to the human side because people are eating all that mixed up DNA concoction that's been out, especially in the last 20 years. This has been happening. People don't know what the hell's in their food supply. They've tried to purify it, but this is what I believe is going on. In God's essence, he didn't make a cow to eat a pig, and he didn't make the pig to eat a chicken.
Right.
But what's been going on especially in the USA, we've cut a lot of that out in Canada, and I would say, maybe if we're not seeing bird flu cases, then maybe it's something to do with that. We had this disease that was in the hog industry called PED. It killed 20-some million pigs from 2012 to 2016. It's still going on. One of the things that they cut out, but one of the things they didn't cut out was the feeding of blood meal. And you can trace some of the outbreaks of the disease PED to actually pigs being fed blood meal.
Wow.
So there's discussing practices have been going on. They're allowed to go on, and then of course they flare up, and then out comes an outbreak of a disease because you're feeding animals that die from a disease.
Right.
So those animals that die from a disease are cooked. They say the cooking kills it. But listen to me. you got a steak on the barbecue, right?
Yeah.
You cook it because that's the way. It doesn't kill it's not still living.
Right.
If you would have analyzed the steak prior to you cooking and analyzed it after, it's the same analytical components. It hasn't changed. Only it's red or it's brown. Like it just changes in texture, and because you're killing the same analytics, the vitamins, the nutrients still stay the same. Cooking really. So that's what's happening.
So when they give mRNA and the mRNA vaccines have DNA in it, which we know they're doing, and that DNA then is also transferring into the meat. So the cow is still possibly eating other cows, which it's not supposed to be eating.
First of all, I don't. What I know is the only mRNA vaccines that were used was in the hog industry. That was the only place that mRNA vaccines have been used. They haven't been used in the cattle industry. They haven't been used in the poultry industry. They were used in the hog industry in the USA. In Ontario, there was 100,000 animals that were somewhere around 100,000 that were vaccinated with an MNR vaccine.
Right.
In 2013. That, because the hog is very close to the same as a human. I talked to Brian Brittle. Is that the way? Byron Brittle?
Bridle, yeah.
Bridle. I talked to him about this, and we haven't got back together to further our talk. But my belief, and Brian, it is at that time, why was that done? This was just leading up to COVID. Was
right.
MNR, because that's where the MNR vaccine was first seen in the hog industry. In the States, they used it more intensely. In Ontario, there was 100,000 vials used. We don't absolutely know where those were used or where that vaccine was used, but that's where it went. That, of course, that meat was consumed. But then what I'm saying is all the offal, which that's what they call it, the stuff they would throw away.
Yeah.
That all went back to the animal sector, or actually in some of it, notice it's disgusting, but
yes.
A lot of that makes it into the cosmetic range.
Yeah.
So I would say if Jody's wearing any lipstick, Chris, don't kiss her when she's got lipstick on, because that comes from that. Comes out of that disgusting. That's where it comes from, the animal. So anyhow, that's what's happening. I think this is where the actual disease and the shedding. We talk about shedding, but it's where it's shedding word's not the right word, but I'm using that word. This is where this disease, and this is where I believe it's being picked up. I don't think it's coming. That's how the transmission is happening. And if I can get some articles and put them up here so we could, at some point, so we could look at this. But that's where I believe it's coming from.
Right. And now they're doing that implantation, that device implantation in cows from 2021 to 2026, where it's mRNA vaccines that will just automatically deliver itself to the cow without having to constantly inject it. This implantable device will automatically deliver the mRNA vaccines to the cows, and it's still under experimentation until 2026. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that if we end up with more mad cow disease later on down the pipe.
Absolutely. But folks, if you're getting milk from Walmart or ice cream or someplace and it has USA on it, they have, and I'm sorry right now, I don't know the name of it, but the Americans use a drug that makes the cow, its brain think, okay, I got to produce more milk. So it's a brain, it says to the cow's brain, you need to produce more milk. So the cow will produce about 20% or more milk just by injecting this. So we have these obese people that's running around. Sorry, I shouldn't have said that way. Maybe I should. But we have obese people that are getting obese from drinking milk, and they should be running around getting more exercise, let's say. But they're drinking this milk, and they know little of what's happening. So even though you tell people that they should be getting local milk or local food, a lot of people in this freedom movement are still going to Walmart, No Frills. I'm not saying that they're bad companies. I'm just saying that the product that they have on the shelves has these things in it. They're not going to buy local food from local people or producing their own local food. They're still going out and continuing to give money to these multinational corporations that are actually taking us down as farmers and our food supply. So that I want to make very pointed. If you're a freedom person and you believe in the freedom thing, you need to start find some farmers, start growing your food yourself, stop buying this food that's contaminated, because I could make 10 shows about what I've just been talking about, but that's really when you don't have to look at the label and say, oh, there's bugs in it. Hell, there's way more than bugs in the food. There's a lot of things in your food supply that you need to start looking at and being serious about.
Right. Since we're talking about raw versus pasteurized milk, it's a topic. What are the benefits? What are the difference? Like, what's the benefit for raw milk over pasteurized milk, and what happens with pasteurized milk that makes it lesser than raw milk?
Boy, that's a fantastic question.
Thank you.
That I love to answer. There's so many benefits from drinking raw milk. I mean, if you look at a child nursing, you look at, there's all kinds of studies that's been done of children being breastfed or non-breastfed, the IQ level and health, and that's the same for animals, and of course, and it's exactly the same for people drinking milk. Pasteurization just absolutely kills the milk. So you want a milk that's low pasture. Like you can either drink raw milk, or you want to choose a milk that has low pasteurization but no homogenization. Because homogenization, what it does is it breaks the fat molecule so that it flows and there's no fat in the bottle. Fat's the most important thing. You need actually marbling in your meat, and you need to consume fat, because again, that's where the microbes and the nutrients and everything are. So again, if you can find raw milk, it's illegal in Ontario. It's illegal. It's in 18 states, maybe as many as 21 states in the USA. It's legal to have to consume pasteurized milk or sell it. I think it is 18 states. In a lot of European countries, it's legal to sell or consume pasteurized milk. In fact, you can find it in vending machines, just like you would a Coca-Cola vending machine. You can find it in vending machines there. But what it does is actually turns the frontal lobe where your brain is. There's all kinds of studies that it actually in children, especially in that growing stage from a year old, after they're a year old to 6 to 10 or 12 years old, it actually turns on the brain of people. So drinking milk, I see children that are not consuming milk. You can draw your own. I'm not happy. They don't look healthy, and they don't have mental fortitude that they should have because they're not consuming milk.
Wow, that's funny. Frontal lobe stuff. So it means that's their higher reasoning. That's the common sense. That's the
critical thinking, empathy,
critical thoughts.
as well.
Yeah, that's where all that lives.
That's a total show in itself. But I believe food is the basis of life. If you don't have good food, Weston Price suggest, people listen to this, look up Weston Price Foundation. Weston Price actually came the same. His family just lived a mile north of where I live. That's quite a story, the Price family. But they came the same way as our family, from the same area in the world, came the same way, followed the same fortitude and the same mental, religious, and spiritual, I guess, side both our family and the Price family. But if you look up the Weston Price Foundation, you'll find a credible, probably nowhere else in the world will you find an avenue where you can become healthy, how to do it, what to eat, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
Nice. I'm just going to go back to I'm going to drive the point home with the raw milk stuff. This guy does a good video. It's short, but he's a raw milk farmer and raises some good questions here.
Isn't it weird the FDA will allow you to buy raw meat, but not raw milk? Like, isn't it also strange that they'll let you buy raw vegetables, trust you as a free adult to handle them as you please? Every year people get sick from listeria, spinach and listeria, they go hand in hand. But not raw milk. No. Like, does it make any sense that the government, the FDA, will not only let you buy raw seafood, they'll let you go to a store, a restaurant, and consume raw seafood prepared by someone else, but not raw milk? Like, doesn't that make you want to go buy some raw milk? Free Amos Miller. Power to the Amish.
Absolutely. The problem with this whole raw milk is the control of the food supply. The processor, has control of the farmer, has control of the consumer, and by processing it, they get control of it. But it's ready. It doesn't matter if it's milk, meat, cheese, what it is. They gain control by doing it. I mean, the other problem, of course, is that in other countries, there's a process set up by the raw milk people of how to do it properly. And the government, I would have to say, they're so down the processors, because the processors, of course, there's payoffs.
Correct.
So they're so down the processors' lane that they don't want to teach the public or anybody how to do it the right way, or they don't want to set guidelines, let's say, to make sure that it's done the right way. But as I say, the Queen and the royal family consume raw milk.
Right.
And not seeing them get sick. I haven't heard any suspicious things.
Right.
So most of the good people, let's call them the elite, are consuming good food. They're not consuming a Coca-Cola and a bag of chips.
Well, look at the food that we've been seeing lately. We've been seeing videos of this food that doesn't behave like real food anymore. And we even had Angela at our party this weekend saying she bought, I think it was avocados, and left them out on her counter. And 2 weeks later, they were still the same color. And she cut into them, and she said it took forever to cut into them. And when she did, it was like rubber inside. It was the bright green color, but it was rubber inside. And we've got a video here of a lady showing fake food.
Yeah. For some reason, the first part of the audio is doubled up, but it gets better after that. So Just got to get through the first 30 seconds.
It looks as if FDA has just approved lab-grown chicken by a company called Good Meat, which is a subsidiary of a company called Just, which is owned by, you guessed it, Bill Gates. This lab-grown chicken, or cultivated meat, is produced by taking stem cells from real chickens and then grown in a lab using a bioreactor. And from that, the resulting tissue is processed and used to create meat products that replicate the same taste and texture as chicken. Now, as of right now, this is only being sold to 30 restaurants owned by world-renowned chef and humanitarian Jose Andres. He recently stated this in a press release. So now I want to know, is this really where our world is headed? Where we're all going to be eating lab-grown meat to save the planet? Are Costco and Whole Foods selling fake fruits? I've been hearing about this, but check out what's happening to these people.
When she opens it and she breaks it in half, it gets very tough and doesn't really break. And when it pulls, it's like it's glue.
Like, it's not even breaking, like, at all. Like, it, and I know you guys can't feel the texture, Avi, right? Because it's a video. But, like, it literally feels fake.
Those of people posting rubbery watermelon. I can't believe I got one. I got a rubbery watermelon. The texture is so weird. Like,
but there's a clinking, and it sounds like something's stuck. So I go in the drain, and there's a blueberry that's not breaking apart. It's not doing anything. It's what's making the noise. And I pick it up, and why is there a rubber blueberry in my toddler's snack? This came from the carton of blueberries. My husband cut it in half. I really don't know if you can see it that well. Glistening, it's silicone. It's a silicone blueberry. It is a solid rubber blueberry. She is under 2. I got this at Whole Foods also. Organic. I was trying to, like, you know, do the right thing.
The billionaire owners of the wonderful company are trying to take over the lemon market with their seedless lemons. Owners Stuart and Linda Resnick bought the exclusive U.S. licenses and IP for 2 seedless lemon varieties. The couple hopes to gain a 25% control of the U.S. fresh lemon market with their exclusively licensed seedless lemons. This would remove the ability to regrow a lemon tree from the seed. The wonderful company also owns Halos, Fiji Water, Wonderful Pistachios, and Palm, and has come under heavy criticism for their intensive water use. The Resnicks started acquiring majority stakes in water right basins back in 1994 through a series of secret agreements and meetings. The Resnicks are longtime donors and close friends with a number of California politicians, including the late Dianne Feinstein, who advocated for them to have more water pumping rights. This is a perfect example of why we should look to support small and local farms over large corporations that control grocery store shelves.
So there you go. Lots of examples where they're replacing food with fake food while they clamp down on food. I think it's for nothing more than to give the impression that the food abundance is still there in the stores while they're dwindling the food supply.
Yeah,
Absolutely. I think again, I'm, you know, we call ourselves freedom people. We call ourselves against the grain, or we're you know, we're supportive of the world the way God intended to be.
Mm-hmm.
The actual fact is that what I'm seeing is that people are still continuing to buy food from the supermarket. And then they're not alerted to the thing, what you just seen, or any good food standards, because they're not maybe educated, or they haven't educated themselves to what they should be buying. But they're slipping these genetically altered foods in, and of course, I guess it's just the same as if you're buying a cup of coffee at Tim Hortons, and then you notice, you get used to the taste,
Mm-hmm.
and then all of a sudden the taste changes. You wonder, hey, what's going on? The taste of this coffee has changed. So they're slipping these things in, and then we become used to them, not noticing them that the actual taste is different or whatever. And people really have lost their palate for food, and they really don't know what really kind of good food is. And then, when they don't have good food, they then have health problems.
Yes.
So I think we have to start looking at this local food, getting local food, finding things that are safe. I have been looking across Ontario to find chicken, and it's a real big problem.
Mm-hmm.
One of the reasons, and I'm not here to make anyone upset, but I don't want to eat chicken that has been hella killed, and it's almost impossible to find that. Again, not that I'm not here to make anybody upset. It's just the way what I want. But the problem of that is that a lot of this chicken is what I call dirty chicken. So, we want it antibiotic free. We want it drug free, so there's not a lot of options out there to find that. I just found an option. The affordable problem too for a lot of people, if you're in a Freedom Network or wherever you are, food has to be affordable.
Yes.
Right.
And you have to find a source that's affordable, safe as it can be, because we on the other side of this, we have a bunch of people that are running around and that's saying, okay, well, hey, I have an egg, and it's been fed this, and the chickens are this, and da 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 da, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, well, good for you that you've done that, but is the egg any better than the egg that's coming out of our eggs here at our farm? I would say that not likely it is, but of course they want $10 a dozen because their egg's special. So I find that when you look at food on the shelf and you look at it and it doesn't have it doesn't have any write up or what it is or any ingredients list or whatever. It's as big a fraud as Bill Gates is. And I'm a little bit upset at that's kind of going on too.
Yeah.
Because these people are kind of leading people astray, saying that they have something that's special, and I'm not sure it's that special.
Right. So you've got culling of livestock, you've got intentional drought, you've got raising food prices, you've got it blamed on supply chains. So, and they're all saying, well, the population problem is exploding. We got to find ways to come up with food. But here's the thing. We just need to re-educate people to plant their own food, maybe keep some chickens on your yard. For those people who don't have the yards, you can team up with local farmers. You can certainly, help them out instead of buy your food in the grocery store. But you can also team up with your neighbors who have the yard space, and you can come in and you can man gardens, and you guys can share the space, share the labor, and share the food.
Yeah, and I know what a lot of people are doing in the cities now, especially those with tiny little yards, is they're using, instead of having front lawns, they're tearing up their lawns and putting in gardens in their front lawns. And why cut grass when you can actually grow your food there? Or they're buying our tree gardens that we have as a partner. So even if you don't have a lawn, you live in a condo or an apartment building, you definitely can buy tree gardens and grow your own vegetables and fruits.
So how do you store your own food, Ed? Like, what are some of the best ways to keep a food supply going for yourself?
Well, I think that that's a loaded question. I think that first of all, I think the major problem, which I've seen, it really manifests itself through the COVID years, let's call them, is that people don't have a skill set.
Yes.
So, people get, let's say, some backyard chickens. And then, of course, I get call after call after call, something's wrong with their chickens. People, like my wife says, every year, my son, my wife, myself, every year we learn something.
Right.
We planted potatoes and we learned something. We learned that you learn something every year. So, if you're just new, keeping some animals or keeping some planting a garden, especially animals, you can buy it cheaper from a farmer than you can grow it yourself.
True.
So if you have 50 chickens or 20 chickens, by the time you buy the feed and all the expenses, yes, it's nice to have those eggs, but would have been better off to collectively got somebody that has a bit of knowledge, because you're going to have some losses. So there's that. For storing, so I really think, though, people have to get in the habit of growing their own food, vegetables, having some animals, whether it's chickens, something that's simple, chickens, goats, sheep, something that's very simple to take care of. As far as storing food, for what's going to happen, and I wrote down and put some stars behind it. People are asleep. What I've seen in especially the last 16 months, is people are not preparing for what's coming.
Right.
For what is coming just over the horizon, possibly this fall, is going to make COVID and the depression look like a non-story. So it's time to get ready and start thinking. And storing food. They say if you have 400 pounds of grains and lentils, so like rice, lentils, wheat, like some wheat berries. If you have 400 pounds per person, that's how much you need per person to live for a year. Getting that stored away properly, storing it properly. I don't know if you just want me to go into that storage part of it, but getting it stored away, put it away. And actually the cheapest way probably to store food, I know there's a pile of people out there talking, but it's actually buying a cheap vac machine at Tire, Walmart, Costco, wherever, one of those cheap vac machines.
Yeah.
And buying the packages that you can either buy the packages that would fit in the biggest bag, or you can actually put it in a Ziploc bag and vac it. Once that's vacked, that thing's as hard as a rock. There's no air. I mean, the ancient Egyptians proved that if you put a guy in a tomb and band-aid him, there's no oxygen.
Fly forever.
That's right.
So if you vac something, vac it, and there's no air, it literally can't spoil. So I've actually put it I probably should have put it on here tonight so people could have, or I could give it to you to put it some other time. But I have this went across Canada, North America. It's called Make Ready. It's I don't know, maybe a 30-page what you need to do to make yourself ready.
That would be great.
Yeah, we'll put it up on the website for sure.
Have that, and I have another one that we just got done putting out. It's it has to do on getting yourself ready for more of what to do as far as if something would happen to your home or where
Like a prep manual?
it's not a prep manual. It's more of a has nothing to do with food. It's more of it's emergency handbook.
Okay.
What to do in emergency. It covers all the different emergencies, and then it gives you like where you would go. All those things is in this emergency handbook. We just got it done about
Awesome.
2 months ago, and we've been putting that out to people.
That's amazing.
So
go ahead. Still writing down your notes here.
I think one of the most important things, we've talked about food, and I'm sure we've left out lots of things, but the most important thing a person can actually do is and you can't forget, is water. Two things that are food is very important, but if you don't have water, you're done. You can't last. I think it's 48 hours. After 48 hours, you're toast if you don't have water. I think a male consumes 6 liters a day, and 4 liters a day. I believe that's the stats. So having water supply, having availability to water. If you don't have water, you're toast. So if you're in a city,
right,
or I don't even care if you're in the country, you have a well, you better figure out really, really, really quick how you're going to store and keep water. If you don't have water, you're toast.
Right.
And antibiotics. What I just went through with my health, if I wouldn't have had antibiotics, I wouldn't be here tonight talking to you.
Correct. Yeah, those are so yeah, we're starting to put prepper stuff up on the site as well. So we'll happily take your emergency handbook, and you're right about water. They say, in a wintertime situation, you can survive 3 hours without shelter, 3 days without water, and 3 weeks without food. So but most people start looking for food right away, so they're not sure their priorities are kind of backwards, right? So what about freeze-dried foods? Do you think all the nutrients get sucked out, or is that good in a pinch?
I think the freeze-dried is okay, but listen, if you I don't believe that we're looking at 20 years or 10 years.
Neither do we.
Or 3 years. I think we're looking at a short time here. So laying up a bunch of freeze-dried stuff and thinking that, it's 20 years, we're got to survive this, whatever. No. So I would stick to, like I say, if you can store it in a dark place and put it away, especially grains, but canned goods, grains, those things you need to survive.
Right.
You got to remember too is if you have children and your wife, husband, they're not going to want to eat every day. Sit down and eat rice. I mean, no. I think one of the most important things you could probably store is rice, but having that variety of things. And I mean, again, it's that, people wait to fall to say, okay, we're going to can up a bunch of vegetables. Hell, they're at the store now.
Yes.
Like you can go get at the store now. Don't wait to fall. Go to the store now, and get whatever you're going to get. Maybe if you're going to can peaches, of course, it's at peach season. But you have to get those things and learn how to can. You got to. I mean, if you're going to preserve it, then you got to can things. But then go to the store, buy a can of peaches. Make sure it's not from China. You can buy local. Now there's here at we actually have a store, and we're selling canned, or they're not canned, but they're jarred preserves that come from Mennonite country, and there's a few places in the Elmira area that you can buy that sort of thing. Yes, it's costly, but if you want to have the peaches that this company makes are as good as a peach off the tree. Last week we sold 28 jars in 3 hours. So
well, we may as well tell everybody where your store is, Ed. And I'm going to say, just before you do that, you gave me a jar of that horseradish beet spread.
Oh, yeah.
That is the best, by the way. I love that stuff. So you were quite right. You said it was amazing. It is amazing. So where is your store?
We're at in Newburgh, Ontario, which is halfway between Kingston and at 30 Embury Road in Newburgh. That's where our store is.
And the store is called Harvest Fresh?
Harvest Fresh.
Awesome.
And I mean, but people have the ability out there to do the same as what we're doing.
Yes.
If you're in Toronto, out of a garage or somewhere, and I mean, I've talked to people about this, but I'm not scolding you. I'm just telling you, get your act together. Like it's close to midnight, and get your acts together. You need to start to think about where your food's coming,
right?
Because these guys are not going to back off. And the most dangerous thing, I don't want to go into the second show, but the most dangerous thing that I want to tell folks is that we're this close to having no food. And the reason for that is because Russia, the nitrogen that farmers put on their fields to grow the crops,
yes,
95% of that nitrogen comes from Russia.
Yeah.
And Russia is holding us hostage. If they cut us off, and they could easily do it by just not sending the boatloads of nitrogen here that we grow our corn, soy, all those lovely crops that you're driving by in your car, truck, motorbike on the highways, those lovely crops that you see.
Yeah.
They're growing is from nitrogen that comes from Russia. So if they cut the nitrogen off us, which almost happened, and they didn't do it, I don't know why they didn't do it. If I was Putin, I would have did it. I would have cut off these countries, and they would be running out of food immediately, because we don't have the whereabouts, or we cannot produce nitrogen. It'll take 10 to 20 years to get up a plant, unless magnificently it's done, but it wouldn't going to happen. So that's how how close we are just to being cut off food. And I mean, that nitrogen just doesn't go on the field crops that you drive by. It goes on all the tomatoes, all those crops, crops too. So if that nitrogen's not here, we're done as a nation. We're done. That day is coming. And I fear that day, when that day comes.
Well, you actually sent us an article, and we pulled out of that article. We've got a slide for it. The 7, what was it? 7 we should be concerned, or?
Yeah, that's there. It's
7 things to know about the bird flu, but that also goes into as well the fertilizer, what our governments are doing by putting in all of these conditions and sanctions on other countries. It's like a food war is happening.
Yes.
What was it? 1,200 sanctions have been put on Russia by the U.S. And one of those sanctions is the fertilizer, but it's other sanctions that they've put on it as well that is causing food shortages all around the world, and helping to helping to push on the avian flu by not allowing certain fertilizers, certain foods, certain grains to come into our countries, be imported. And this is all helping create this food crisis that we're going into, or food war, if you please, that we're in.
Absolutely, Jody, because they passed GATT, the Global Agreement on Tariffs and Trades, which controls all flow of not only food but all goods. And of course, it's not NAFTA, but it's called something different now. But all these trade agreements that they've made help out the small farmer or small businessman. They help out the globalists that are controlling the multinational corporations, and it's impossible to compete against them. You can't compete against them, and the problem is, if you have a dozen eggs and it's $5 and they're beautiful eggs, fresh, beautiful eggs from the farm, and you have $3 eggs at the store, people are going to drive to the store and get the $3 eggs, even though they come from one of these companies. And just a little further report, because I have it on. It's the last thing on my list. I looked up when these bird flu things started happening in Texas, Michigan, where they killed 5 million birds, euthanized 5 million birds at one place, 2 million birds at the next place, 1 million birds at the next place, 3 billion. These are big numbers.
Yes.
Farmers don't have 3 million birds or 5 million birds. I don't know any farmer that has that many birds. You have a few corporations that have 35, 40, 50 million birds they own. When you look at ownership of these companies, who you find on the ownership of these companies are banks, BlackRock, all of these elitist companies.
Right.
They don't give at two hoots that they're killing 5 million birds. It's the same, you could say, as putting. I know I make maybe this analogy, but the Roman soldiers or them, they didn't care about putting Christ on the cross. They didn't care about putting him up there. They don't care about slaughtering these animals, euthanizing these animals. They don't care. They don't care about the beef animals that are going to get euthanized. They don't care. That's the fact of it. They just don't care. So they own all these animals, and now they're putting us in the position where we're running out of food.
Yes.
And we don't have the farmers, the small farmers or the medium-sized farmers to take up that slack. It's just not there, and it's just not going to happen. And I know I sent you a slide, and I think maybe some of your viewers have seen it, but where we've seen all these fires break out, and I know it sounds like tinfoil hat stuff tinfoil hat, but listen, it's not tinfoil hat stuff, because I get calls. I know some of these plants, and then they just mysteriously burn down. We have, not just plants that's burning down, but now we have these big farms that are just burning down all over the place. So there's something that's going out there. I'm not saying I'm not conspiratorial. I'm not saying but something's going on. It's just not. It's happening at an alarming rate, and it's happening. It's happening more and more, and you freedom people got to wake the hell up, and because you're running out of time. Like, time's not on your side. You're running at a time, and when you see $5, $7, $8 a liter fuel, and you see beef now is almost $25 for a steak, but when it gets $50 for a steak and $100 for that bag of rice, and you don't have the money, you're leaving your family, yourself and your family in a hell of a mess. So you better get a move on, because an article just put out last week that said it's now $1,034 per person in Canada per person, the cost of food compared to 2019. $1,034. I believe that was what
Right.
the article said.
Yeah, it's gone up exponentially. So basically, just a couple of things in that. You said that people would drive to the store if eggs were $3 or $5 at the farmer. I say that's the biggest challenge, because people would still drive to the store if it was $6 and it was $5 at the farm. It's more convenient for them to go to the store, and getting the stuff from the farmer to the table, that's always been the biggest challenge. That's number one. The other one that you're talking about is what you were referencing is all the food processing plants in North America that have been mysteriously burned, or even planes have crashed into them, and it's hundreds now. It's hundreds, and we've done the updated map periodically on that.
Isn't it like 792 or something like that?
Hundreds of them. So what this is, I mean, the basic point of this show is to tell people your government and foreign governments are attacking your food, and this is an act of war. And it is literally an act of war, and that is how we need to see this, because they are cutting our supply chain, and that is literally an internationally recognized act of war. But the difference between this and all the political stuff that's going on, you can actually take control of your food right now if you pay attention. And if you get on it right now, and it doesn't have to cost you a fortune. As a matter of fact, lettuce is the easiest thing to grow, and it's $10 in the store for a pack of 5 heads of half heads of romaine lettuces. So lettuce is getting expensive, and it's the easiest thing to grow. So you're saving $10 right there just by growing lettuce.
Yeah, and seeds for lettuce are $2.79 for heirloom non-GMO seeds. $2.79, and you can be eating lettuce literally all summer long for $2.79.
And and that's another thing. If you don't have a seed bank, and if you don't have these things stored up, put away now, next spring, you don't have any seeds, you're done.
Right. Exactly right.
You need to really start thinking about your food, your health, making healthy choices, working with a group. You don't need a big group, but if you have a few families that can work together, that have a skill set, getting together, talking things over. I would, really encourage and encourage you, but not only encourage you, I'm giving you a little bit of warning too. Don't make it into it needs to be put in a way like my grandmother. I see where you're not you're looking forward to the food that you're going to eat, that you're producing yourself, or you're storing. It's hard, folks, to think that there's no tomorrow, and I know that's but look at it in a way that you're doing something that's going to benefit your family. Don't maybe look at it in the alarmist sort of way.
No.
I know, but that is the point. But I mean, if you can, because what happens is when you're sitting down with other people, and I may get slapped. I can feel that hand coming through the screen. But if you are sitting down with some women, guys, I mean, it's good to sometimes wear the pants in the family. I don't think the men are actually, what I've been seeing is that the men are doing virtually nothing. It's been the women that have been doing everything. The men have been sitting there idle. And, if I go to rallies, if I even go out locally, we're pretty much 3-1, 3 women for a man. So where the heck are you guys? What the hell are you doing? Are you just sitting at home? It's time to man up. But at the same point, when you're talking these things over, maybe it's a time to discuss some of these things that are a little heavy, might be a little heavier on, especially on your wife or a woman or your children, to actually break free and start thinking about some of these things and man up a little bit here, not a little bit, but a lot of it. But it's good. I think it's healthy to sit down and start strategizing and getting your act together. Because if you don't, you're going to be in serious, serious troubles. Because we have so many things that are coming to the forefront. So it's time to just to do some things that will benefit your family. Like, so if nothing happens, like absolutely nothing happens, great. I'm praying and hoping that nothing does happen. But it'll help your family be healthier, wiser, make good choices.
Right.
And the sooner you start preparing, the cheaper it is. Because I'm sure those who are on social media have seen the guy who was talking about an order he did a couple of years ago at Walmart, and he happened to notice a reorder all button up top, and he hit it. And, his order a couple of years ago was $126. And for the exact same items, it was now over $400. So the sooner you start preparing and buying stuff, the cheaper it actually will be. So even if nothing happens, you've got a supply of food at a much cheaper price today than what it'll be 3 weeks from now.
Right, exactly. And so, that's the thing. Don't make it about a fear thing. Make it about learning a new skill and the satisfaction of eating food that you produce yourself. And so at least you're getting something good and positive out of that. So,
yeah.
It's been hard, folks, to keep a positive mindset in this negative world that we have been in for the last 3 years. But you need to start. What better way of working with your family or other people than to grow some food and to share in that food,
Right.
My wife has a group of ladies, there's almost 40 now, that get together once a month, that they have a potluck, they get together. There's a bit of talked about, but it's mostly, it's a fun time just to sit down and talk about sharing some food. I mean, so I think you got to look at positives and just getting out and driving and finding, a food source, like, and knowing that there's somebody down the road that you can get beef from, or eggs from, or
right.
lettuce from, or whatever. Those are all positive things that we need. Our families, especially children, will, like, as they grow older, never forget to go. Like, they go to an apple orchard and pick some apples. But listen, folks, it's got to go past the stage of getting that bushel of apples and just taking them home. It's got to go past that stage where you're actually making applesauce, and those sealers of applesauce in your pantry. Like, you that's what it's got to go past the stage. We have to start learning, and YouTube. There's so many things on YouTube. You can watch to learn you how to do things.
Right.
It's like that you can't say that you can't. If you say that you can't do it, then I have a size 12 shoe that may need to be fitted somewhere.
You can do it. Now's the time. So, Ed, I think lots of great advice, so much info every time you come. So I just want to thank you for everything that you're doing and all the research that you bring to the table. And I know that you've got to get to bed fairly early in the morning. So thank you for being here tonight. And if people demand it, we will do another food security show and give them more tips and go from there.
I'm sure I'll have, as this keeps progressing, I'm sure there'll be lots more to talk about as the weeks and months go by. Yeah, I'm sure that there's going to be some some things happen in the next few months here that will shape our food supply and shape things. They're definitely not going to stop this crisis that's in the States with the bird flu is likely going to pour over our border into Canada.
Yes.
And it's going to be felt here heavily too.
Mhm.
We need to start thinking before the price of these supplies start to get 50 to 100 to more percent higher.
Exactly.
So
Yeah,
nothing to be afraid of.
No.
We when you know, and you can do better. We know that people in charge don't care about you. They know they're culling birds. We know that this is all a planned excuse in order to bring in more mRNA into our animals because the pharmaceutical companies make a crap ton of money with mRNAs. We know these companies are culling the birds because the government's paying them per bird that they cull. And that is the whole reason behind this. Starve you out. Control the money, control the food. And when they control the food and they control all the money, they control you. So don't let them control you. Get ahead of the game. Start stacking up your pantries as soon as you possibly can. Even if it's just when you go grocery shopping, you buy an extra bag of rice. That's an extra bag of rice you didn't have yesterday, but you will have for tomorrow. So do what you can, folks. Get in your community. Start having your canning parties. Start having your dried freeze parties. And just start sharing recipes, what you can make using simply water and flour or rice, and beans, simple soup recipes that you can can, vegetables that you can, fruits that you can can. Start doing preserves. And another thing, stock up on all those herbs and spices. Super cheap at the bulk barn, super cheap at Costco, because if you do end up having to eat for 4 months straight to get you through the tough times ahead, at least you can flavor it differently every night if you've got a pantry full of seasonings.
Right. Oh man. So we've got an event coming up this weekend that Jody wants to talk about, I think.
Yes. So bring the poster up.
Okay.
So this weekend, Chris and I will be at the How to Change the World conference. Kellyanne Wolf has put this conference together. She's asked myself to co-host, and both Chris Luck and I will be sitting on the media panel. There is a health panel and a media panel and a legal panel. So if you are in the Toronto or Etobicoke area, you can catch us at 2814 Lakeshore Boulevard West. It is a restaurant. There will be a little bit of food on Sunday because Sunday's a long day. It starts at noon on Sunday and goes to about 8 o'clock at night. But on Saturday, it starts at 5 o'clock. So come on out, find out how you can change the world, find out what you can do for media, for health, and for legals going forward, because all three of those are going to be important in order to change the world for better for us. And if you are in the Newburgh area, please check out Ed's store. It is Harvest Fresh. I believe we've got a little slide there. It is Harvest Fresh in Newburgh. He's got the best beef prices around. And trust me, I am an avid budgeter and comparing price person. His beef is fresh. It's locally farmed. Everything in his store is locally farmed, locally sourced. You can't go wrong. There's no crap in his store. It's all good stuff. And his wife makes most of the pies and desserts in that store. And I'm telling you, if you get a chance to eat the strawberry pie or buy the strawberry pie, get it.
That's right.
Highly recommended.
It's very good. So again, thanks, Ed, and we're looking forward to having you come back and be probably our highest attending guest on the next show. So
you guys keep up the good work, you two. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Ed, and good night, everybody. If you're in the area, we'll see you this weekend at the conference, and otherwise, we will see you Monday. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.